Welcome. On behalf of the College of Arts and Humanities History Department, the Africana Studies Program, and UCF Alumni, thank you for joining us this evening. My name is Dorisha Jones, Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion Specialist for the Children's Home Society of Florida, and 2021 graduate of the University of Central Florida. Go Knights, charge on. While at UCF, I was actively involved as a lead scholar, Knight of Distinction, Council Representative of the Black Student Union, President of the UCF chapter of the NAACP, and member of the inaugural President's Student Advisory Council with a platform of the safety, equity, and inclusion of Black students and the Black community. I am so grateful to participate in this lecture that honors Dr. John T. Washington, a humanitarian, leader, and community activist who left an impactful legacy with UCF and students like me. This evening's lecture is titled, "It Could in Fact Conquer the Color Line, Black Women, Beauty Advertisements, and Dreams of Equality." Considering early 1900s American beauty advertisements, this presentation serves to explore some of the ways that beauty has been advertised to Black women under the guise of equality, social mobility, and respectability. Before hearing from our lecture speaker, I'd like to pause to pay tribute to Dr. John T. Washington. In my senior year, I was able to witness a few areas of my advocacy reach full fruition with the creation of multicultural space within the student union and the installation of the Dr. John T. Washington mural to both honor Dr. Washington and add representation on campus of the countless contributions the Black community has made at UCF. When it comes to community service, student involvement, our passion for mentorship, and triumphing through adversity, literally modeling the values Dr. Washington stood for. I feel that the mural serves as a beautiful reminder that we were here. There are many titles used to describe Dr. John T. Washington: professor, colleague, minister, student advisor, and community leader. The manner in which he selflessly lived his life was a vivid example of altruism to whoever he encountered. He looked for ways to serve others and did so selflessly and sincerely. For those of you who knew him personally, your recollections of him are unfading. Dr. Washington was an associate professor of sociology at UCF, but he was much more than a professor to his students. Students saw that Washington was passionate about what he taught and were drawn to him. According to his colleagues, it was not uncommon to find a line of students outside of his office waiting for his counsel. Washington was instrumental in the development of the Office of Equal Opportunity and Affirmative Action, the African American Student Union, and the Office of Multicultural Academic and Support Services. He also served as the advisor to many of the student organizations who at that time were at the forefront of the struggle to strengthen minority representation on UCF's campus. Washington was also a community leader and activist. He had the unique ability to bring diverse populations. NAACP, the Orlando Metropolitan Urban League, and the Mayor's Minority Business Task Force. He was particularly passionate about the Meals on Wheels program, which provided meals for Orlando's elderly. His efforts were publicly recognized when he was awarded the West Channel 6 Jefferson Award for his leadership and volunteerism in community service. This evening's lecture upholds his spirit and legacy and the university's collective commitment to diversity, scholarship, and service. Thank you.
Thank you, Dorisha, for sharing Dr. Washington's legacy and for your continued advocacy work. I am Aaron Booker, a graduate student originally from South Central Los Angeles. I'm currently a master's candidate in interdisciplinary studies thesis track program with a curriculum geared towards social justice, diversity, inclusion, and public administration broadly. This evening, I have the pleasure of recognizing the UCF History Department and Africana Studies program's commitment to honoring Dr. Washington's legacy by awarding scholarships to students studying Africana Studies. The John T. Washington Scholarship Award for Africana Studies Minors awards a student minoring in Africana Studies. The John T. Washington Community Service Award awards a student minoring in Africana Studies who demonstrates a commitment to serving the Central Florida community. This year, Dayla McFadden is a recipient of both awards. Dayla is a senior majoring in sociology while minoring in Africana Studies. She serves as a permanent substitute as one of the most challenging schools in Central Florida. Obtaining her degree, she will transition to full-time teacher to help reconstruct and teach young Black minds. Her community service centers on activism, and her personal mission is to fight for the ones who came before her. She does this by participating in organizing marches, sit-ins, and boycotts to advance equality. Dayla is part of the New Black Panther Party, which fights against inequalities and helps predominantly Black communities with food services, transportations, and defense classes. Please join me in congratulating Dayla McFadden. All right, so I also have the honor tonight of introducing to you all the speaker. Dr. Leah Gaines joins the University of Central Florida in fall 2021 as a lecturer in interdisciplinary studies. Dr. Gaines holds a PhD in African American Studies and African Studies with a concentration in urban education from Michigan State University. She received a master's from Morgan State University, where she studied history and African American studies. She completed her undergraduate studies at Townsend University, where she majored in psychology and minored in African American studies. Her research interests are in structural equities, I can read, urban education, student experiences, African American language, Black women and beauty, race and identity. Her latest publication, In the Midst of the Water Crisis, Language and Resistance in Flint, is an ethnographic work that examines how an educational community in Flint, Michigan has used language to resist the ongoing water crisis. Tonight's lecture serves to explore some of the ways that beauty has been advertised to Black women. Ultimately, the findings share that a specific beauty was a way to first-class citizenship, a new ethic identity and cleanliness. This understanding of what makes beauty was for Black women. This understanding of what beauty was for Black women was heavily influenced by white supremacy, the social construction of race, and racism. Considering historical practices of determining beauty and access to opportunity, this research calls for the challenging of current and future societal definitions of beauty, the politics of respectability, in the way that race is either privileged or deemed unworthy by society. Dr. Gaines will invite you to participate, and the chat is available for you to engage with her during segments of this evening's presentation. We'll be taking your questions following Dr. Gaines' talk. I ask that you place your questions in the chat, and I will share them with our speaker during the Q&A portion. Dr. Gaines, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Aaron. I am going to go ahead and share my screen. All righty, good evening, everyone. I hope everyone is doing well today. My name is Dr. Leah Gaines, and the title of my presentation is It Could in Fact Conquer the Color Line, Black Women, Beauty Advertisements, and Dreams of Equality. During the spring of 2021, when I first began this research, a viral photo of Black women in the airport became the topic of discussion on multiple social media platforms. Because the Black women pictured were wearing bonnets as head coverings, the internet discussion centered around whether it was appropriate for Black women to wear bonnets in public and whether these bonnets limited the success and opportunities for Black women. In other words, social media began to blame Black women for their and their bonnets for the social, economic, and political limitations that Black women sometimes face. Many of the comments reflected elitism, anti-Blackness, and politics of respectability. Celebrity and comedian Monique jumped into the conversation and told Black women that bonnets and headscarves were not presentable attire in public. She encouraged Black women to comb their hair, have pride, and present themselves as worthy of respect so that they could in turn receive equitable treatment. Monique received much support and criticism for her opinions, so much so that a few weeks later, she continued the conversation by posting a second picture. This time of a single Black woman in the airport, similar to the first picture, this one seemed to be similarly taken and posted without the consent of those photographed. This time, the woman was dressed in a dark colored tank top, wearing what seemed to be either a swimsuit bottom or printed shorts, and some sort of head covering over her braided hair. Monique's caption of the photo reflected her beliefs in respectability, encouraging Black women to do better if and when they can. Now, because the situation with the bonnets happened about a year ago, some may not remember the conversations that were had. What many may be familiar with is women's basketball coach Sydney Carter. More recently, social media has been having similar conversations about her attire, discussing whether or not what she is wearing is respectable and appropriate attire. When following this contemporary social media discourse, I could not help but to reflect on how commonly society revisits the topic of Black women, beauty, and whether Black women are deserving of respect, equal treatment, and human decency based on their outer appearance. This public conversation on what is or is not appropriate for Black women's social value connects to a long historical discourse centering Black women and beauty. Considering early 1900s beauty advertisements, this research serves to explore some of the ways that beauty has been advertised to Black women under the guise of equality, social mobility, and respectability. So just a brief review of the literature. Black women in America have historically been at the crux of many intersections of oppressions and expectations. This is often manifested through beauty standards that privilege Eurocentric features. These beauty standards must be examined through a historical lens of slavery and the creation of race in America to understand why physical characteristics of Black women were deemed undesirable. In order to justify the enslavement of Black people, many Europeans started emphasizing physical differences between Blacks and whites, creating a manufactured divide between the races where beauty and race became connected. Beauty and race were then used as tools to create a social hierarchy where Black characteristics were placed in direct comparison to white characteristics. Within this dichotomy, ugliness, savageness, and primitiveness were associated with Black physical characteristics, while whiteness became synonymous with beauty. Using race as a social category, the white ideal became the human ideal. During enslavement, those Black people who closely resembled Eurocentric ideals, such as having straighter hair and lighter skin, were regarded as more intelligent and often given more desirable work indoors, while women with darker skin, more kinkier hair, and broader facial features were forced to work in the fields. Some of the enslaved participated in practices that altered their outward appearance, such as straightening their hair with hog lard or axle grease in an attempt to comply with white standards. After emancipation, physical markers such as straight hair and light skin continued to be indicators of increased social status and became a form of capital, of social capital. Individuals that mirrored white beauty were regarded as more acceptable and given more social standing. Also following emancipation, skin bleaching and chemical hair straightening became commonplace alterations undertaken by some Black American women. Similarly, chemicals or intense heat tools were used to straighten their hair. Still, not all Black women associated physical alterations of skin and hair as an attempt to partake in white forms of beauty, as some argued that it was merely convenient and more easier to manage. Others believed, however, it to be an opportunity for social mobility. So the purpose and research questions of this presentation. Examining some beauty advertisements within the Chicago Defender, this research aims to explore some of the ideals of beauty that society had for Black women and what some Black women might have had for themselves during the early 1900s. In doing so, this presentation will explore beauty advertisements published between 1900 and 1950. Some of the questions that I hope to answer with this presentation include: 1, during the early 1900s, what were some of the beauty products and practices advertised to Black women? 2, how do these advertisements promote or promise social, political, or economic equality, justice, or citizenship? And 3, what do these beauty advertisements, articles, and discussions tell us about societal expectations and perceptions of Black women in beauty? Data collection and analysis. So this presentation is sharing research that I worked on with a student research assistant at my previous institution. To collect data for this research, we used the college online databases for access to ProQuest's historical Black newspapers. The college specifically provided us access to the Chicago Defender. Searching the newspapers for beauty advertisements, we looked for articles published during the early to mid 1900s that would provide insight on societal standards and perspectives of beauty. Based on available research in the field, we went into the research prepared to find many advertisements of European beauty standards. Because of this, some of the terms that we used to search included beauty, hair, skin bleaching, hair straighteners, Madam C.J. Walker, chemical skin bleaching, and other relevant keywords. In turn, we were able to find a large sample size of data. To analyze, we coded the findings for multiple themes. First, we read through the articles, advertisements, and discussions for recurring patterns in the data. Some of the commonalities we noticed were that many of the products promised smooth, clear, fresh, wholesome, and pure hair or skin. In addition, we noticed that the products highlighted negative beauty standards or aspects of impurities that needed to be changed. Therefore, the products promised to alter ugly, short, harsh, and brown hair and or skin. After chunking these smaller themes, we were able to code them into larger commonalities. Ultimately, the data showed that beauty was a way to a new ethnic identity, cleanliness, and first-class citizenship. So the theoretical framework used for this research was critical race theory. Critical race theory allowed me to better understand the relationship among race and racism and power within racialized systems of aesthetics and society. Critical race theory recognizes that racism is permanently ingrained into American society and institutions, and beauty politics are not immune to this. There are multiple tenets, principles, and practices of CRT, some of which I believe to be most relevant to this research. That includes the 2 tenets of racism as ordinary, as well as the social construction of race. These tenets and their relevance will be unpacked further with the implications of this research. So I'll talk about it a little bit more towards the end of the presentation. So the findings of this research. First launched by Robert Abbott in 1905, the Chicago Defender is a historically Black newspaper that has served as a voice for and within Black communities for over a century. Like the Defender, historically Black newspapers have communicated political gains for African Americans, criticized government and governmental responses, and even relayed the decisions of important Supreme Court cases. In all, African American newspapers such as the Defender told the socio-political stories that their African American readers largely wanted to consume. Most important to this research, the Defender spoke directly to African American women. Although the Defender has stressed racial pride and reflected the self-determination that the editor sought for Black communities, it often simultaneously countered that same message, especially to its Black women readership. Whilst upholding the African American community through patriotic articles and political participation, the Defender presented a standard of beauty on multiple pages each week that seemed to contradict its entire agenda. That is, the Defender advertised a beauty that reflected the racism that was evident in the larger society. The findings of this research will unpack how beauty products and practices were advertised to Black women under the guise of a new ethnic identity, cleanliness, and first-class citizenship. So the way that I'll share the findings is I'll have them in different sections for a new ethnic identity, cleanliness, and first-class citizenship. And then each section is going to have about 3 slides. So a new ethnic identity. Because Western society operates from a racial hierarchy, where the Black race is usually listed at the bottom, being able to become any race above Black will be considered a step up in society to some. Yet the advertisers of the products included within this section understood the racist and colorist dynamics of society and promised the upward mobility that could come with a new ethnic identity. This can be seen in early 1900s advertisements for Covera, Spinola Company, and Hawaiian Products Company. So on the left, you'll see the advertisement. And then on the right, what I did was I kind of split the advertisement up into 2 small parts so that I can enlarge it so that you all can read it if you would like to. So a 1924 beauty advertisement for Covera skin lightening preparation pictures a colored woman of status named Miss Eleanor Gresham. Miss Gresham is described to be a woman with political status, and she is wearing a long sleeve gown with her hair pinned up similar to that of the style of the progressive new woman. So this progressive new woman socially was this ideal woman that a lot of women in society, regardless of race, wanted to be, right? So today we might consider her to be this middle class woman, okay? The advertisement explains that the lighter skinned woman pictured, and this is a quote, will depend on Covera to look her best. The illustration makes the consumer assume that they can become just as light in complexion and in turn just as accomplished as the beautiful Eleanor Gresham. Further, the product ad reiterates to the consumer that, this is a quote, Covera makes the darkest skin look like tan, while those with tan skin look like dark white people. In the case of Eleanor Gresham, Covera, this is a quote, Covera makes her skin so light that you would hardly know she was colored. In other words, Covera provided Ms. Gresham with a new ethnic identity and social mobility. Covera also minimized the negative effects of their product. This is a quote, don't use harmful bleaches and doubtful preparations that may injure your skin. Covera is the only safe, sure way to have a lighter complexion. While the advertisement does not list Covera's ingredients, we can assume that it contains similar harmful ingredients as other skin lightening cosmetics. And this includes ingredients such as mercury and arsenic, both of which can have negative impacts to the skin and health. And again, similar to the last advertisement, that advertisement as pictured is on the left, and then I broke it up into 3 parts so that I can enlarge it and you all can read it if you would like to. So pictured in a 1929 beauty advertisement for Spinola skin formula are 2 overlapping images of an unnamed Black woman. Both images depict only the woman's face, but highlight important differences between facial characteristics before and after using Spinola. The image of the woman before uses the cream. Her skin is multiple shades darker and pictured grainy. In addition, certain facial features are emphasized, including her nose and her curly hair. The overlapping image shows the woman after the use of the cream. Her skin is clearer, whiter, and smoother. Likewise, her nose is less prominent, appearing to be thinner and smaller. The second image is also altered as it does not show her natural hair, but instead draws attention to her thin lips. It is not merely just hair and skin color that are noticed within a colorist ideology, but also all physical traits associated with Blackness, including facial features such as the nose and lips. As Hayes explains, cosmetic modifications that aim to make features of bodies less ethnically or racially marked, from hair straightening treatments for African Americans to skin bleaching creams, do not take place at random, but rather take place in a larger political and social context. From these images, it appears that Spinola can diminish the prominence of these physical traits, since these physical traits are arbitrarily become racial traits through the social construction of race. Lacking prominent Black features could promise some individuals leeway within their ethnic category. Contrasting these images, it seems that by using Spinola, Black women could be capable of altering natural facial characteristics and in turn an opportunity to alter their ethnic identity. In addition to promising the consumer altered natural facial features, Spinola indicates that the formula will allow consumers to make their skin, this is a quote, as light as you like. The ad goes on even further, proclaiming that individuals will be able to, quote, choose the shade yourself. Thus, the product offers a chance to alter their ethnic identity as the individual so desires. Spinola guarantees its product to work for any consumer in any skin tone, even extremely dark skin. And this is a quote, no matter how dark or complected the skin may be, Spinola will make many shades lighter and more beautiful instantly. Further, the product promises to permanently change the actual skin, not just paint color on. The ad states, this is a quote, there is nothing to show, nothing to rub off, as the product actually changes the skin itself and affects changing one's portrayed ethnic identity. So it's not only what the formula can offer the consumer that indicates the possibility of an ethnic shift, but it's also the branding of the formula itself. So the name of this skin lightener, Spinola, seems to be a direct play off the word Hispaniola, So Hispaniola is the island that houses Haiti and the Dominican Republic, which is situated within the Caribbean. Using this as a brand name, Spinola promotes an exotic dream for the consumer. So from a contemporary lens, we can compare this to hair weaves. So the selling of hair weaves as Brazilian body wave, or Malaysian bundles, or indie Remy, this idea that the product is seen as something unique or something that can make the consumer exotic. When using the product, the consumer is participating in something other, the other being something rather than Blackness. Since physical traits such as skin and hair are commonly used to distinguish Black people from the dominant group in the US, those with white and light skin ideally possess the ability to associate with a different ethnic group and in turn gain social status. Spinola, the quote, newly discovered old Spanish type formula, offers this skin lightening and an exotic other. Drawing upon exotic branding, Spinola advertises that it offers Black women the chance to belong to a different ethnic group in the eyes of society, one that is regarded with more social prestige than Blackness because of their lighter skin tone. So I really want to involve the audience in the discussion. So what I would like is for the audience to unpack this advertisement. So I want you to take a look at it and in the chat, write what you see. So what sticks out to you here? Do you think that this advertisement is selling a new ethnic identity to Black women? If so, how? And if not, why not? So I'll give you a few minutes to read over it and then respond in the chat. Some people are saying Hawaiian hair sticks out or kinky hair sticks out of the advertisement. Straightens most kinky hair. Bleach beautifies from Hawaiian face cream. Positively grows hair. The chat is moving faster than I can keep along with all of them. Beautifies the skin. Calling it beautifier and stating that it will make dark skin much lighter. Beautifier as if the skin is not already beautiful. So everything you all are saying is correct, right? So the name, Hawaiian Products Company, right? Remember selling this exotic other. Straightens the most kinky hair in 5 minutes. Improves any hair, Hawaiian face beauty, right? So the next finding that stuck out is cleanliness. And again, I have the product advertisement on the left, and then I have it broken out on the right so that you can read along if you like. So when altering, When altering one's ethnic identity was not a realistic possibility for Black women to achieve, some products could still offer an avenue to increase status, that is cleanliness. Multiple beauty products alluded in their advertising to uncovering and creating cleanliness for Black women. These 3 brands that promoted cleanliness as a stepping stone for social advantage were Terra Vitae, Black and White, and Ozono. The illusion of becoming cleaner through product usage offered Black women the opportunity to gain more acceptance and possible social status in society. Promoting cleanliness was able to offer increased standing in society because of the historical connection between purity and cleanliness. The notion of purity has historically been synonymous with whiteness and cleanliness. And in order to establish whiteness as pure and clean, there had to be something to juxtapose cleanliness with. That juxtaposition centered on Blackness as represented through dark skin and Black features. As Yaba Blay explains, the projection of white skin as immaculately clean depended on imaginings of Black skin as filthy dirty. Therefore, in order to be seen as fully American, human, or equal, one had to be seen as clean. This theme is extremely prominent in soap advertisements that depict dark and Black skin as inherently unclean and therefore uncivilized. As Berthold explains, this shows how society viewed darker skinned people as a threat to the boundaries of American civilization that must be purified. Because of this, beauty products that guaranteed cleaner skin offered a way to higher social status by cleaning the Blackness out of the skin and hair, or by eradicating the dirtiness tied to Blackness. Terra Vitae skin bleach uses this idea of purity to promote the ability of their products to provide cleanliness. A 1924 beauty advertisement for Terra Vitae features two parallel photos of a woman named Miss Lena Hutt. Before the use of Terra Vitae, her skin is described as dark with a rough complexion. After using the bleaching product, it is noted that Miss Hutt has a wonderful, light, and even complexion. That was a quote. And the product promises to give all consumers, quote, a lighter and lovelier complexion. These two images demonstrate an attempt to actualize symbolic differences that were socially constructed between Blacks and whites, where white skin is regarded as superior because of its cleanliness, purity, and beauty. In doing so, the images depict lighter, cleaner skin as a realistic and desirable possibility for Black women to achieve. In addition to promising better complexions, this is a quote, and lighter skin, many bleaching products promise to clean the skin by eradicating skin disorders and other skin issues. Terra Vitae is an example of this product. Terra Vitae is an example of this, as this product is committed to removing a list of skin disorders, as well as providing nourishment for the skin. The bleaching product is said to eradicate all blemishes, pimples, and a myriad of germs and blackheads. Terra Vitae is described as a scientific discovery that purifies as it cleans, and as an antiseptic, providing clarity for the user. Terra Vitae promises that in 20 minutes you can attain loveliness, beauty in all its grandeur. This is still the quote, beauty means wealth, happiness, popularity, and success. The product continued to promise that your facial defects, blemishes, oily appearance will vanish by the magic of Terra Vitae. Similar to the way in which Terra Vitae portrays dark skin as inherently dirty and impure, Black and white ointment, a beauty skin bleach, promises cleanliness for dark skin. Pictured in the ad is Miss Irene Taylor of Memphis, Tennessee, who is described as a handsome girl after the use of Black and white. The two images of Miss Taylor are presented, one before the use of the ointment and one after. Both images are headshots of Miss Irene, showing only her shoulders, face, and hair. Her hair is pinned up and she is wearing a plain blouse. While both images are fairly grainy, in the first image, almost half of Miss Irene's face is obscured by darkness and the features on the left side of her head are not apparent. The overall photo is very dark, but facial features such as her nose, lips, and eyebrows are distinguishable. The second photo is a washed out image of Miss Irene, where her facial features are not recognizable, but the skin coloration is significantly lighter and appears to be less grainy and smoother than before. Using these two images side by side highlights the way in which the skin bleach will be able to transform the consumer and imitate a more white beauty ideal, not just with skin coloration, but the facial features as well. Cleanliness here is promoted through the language used in the description of the product. To detail her experience using Black and white ointment, Ms. Taylor is quoted by saying that before the use of the product, her face was, this is a quote, full of ringworms, freckles, and bumps. But after her skin is, quote, clear and bright. Similar phrases are used throughout the advertisement to emphasize the ability of the ointment to cleanse and beautify the skin. For example, the product is said to stop itching, remove wrinkles, and most importantly, heal while bleaching. Whether promising to remove imperfections or heal, the language in the advertisement is coded with the idea of racial purity. Purity here can be understood in two senses. One in which the advertiser could convince the public that this bleaching product is safe and reliable for use, since purity was synonymous with health and reliability, advertising the ointment in such a way was possible. Purity can also be understood in a racial sense, where the bleach could purify and clean Black skin. Because of the connection between the notions of purity and health, if white skin was clean skin, then white skin was also healthy skin. Black skin to be both unclean and unhealthy. So similar to before, I would also like the audience to unpack this advertisement. So take a few minutes to read what this says and then write down in the chat what you see. What sticks out to you from this advertisement? Do you think that this advertisement is selling cleanliness to Black women? If so, how? And if not, why not? So someone says it's targeting kinky hair. It's associating straight hair with elegance. They're still referencing the lightening of skin, insinuating that the opposite of kinky is elegant. Someone says that it states that the product has undergone years of scientific research. The truth might be different. That is very true. They're trying to recruit agents to sell it. Yes, so a lot of the products from the early 1900s, you'll see recruitment of people to sell. So similar to like, think of like Avon or Mary Kay products, or I forget the leggings, people who sold the leggings, like similar to how people sell those products. Mm-hmm. I think someone forgot to mute their audio. So yes, as everyone's is saying, it says straighten your hair with Ozono is displayed. Even today, having natural hair is often looked at as dirty or unkept. So to straighten one's hair would be to look clean. In the following paragraphs, descriptive words such as elegant and exquisite are used to describe the nature of one's hair only after using the product. The advertisement further promises to eradicate an array of scalp disorders for the user, such as dandruff, ringworms, and tetters, in addition to straightening the hair. Associating these scalp disorders with natural hair further illustrates that untreated hair is dirty, unclean, and undesirable. The advertisement alludes to the idea that having straight hair means having cleaner hair. The advertisement explains that there are hundreds of testimonials from Black individuals of a higher social status, including physicians, lawyers, and businessmen, that have all used this wonderful product. Using the testimonials from individuals with an assumed economic status indicates that the product is somehow linked to success. Therefore, the product can be understood as promising this status or a chance at this status for users of Ozono. In this sense, it is clear having straight hair becomes a marker of socioeconomic mobility, in addition to being a marker of cleanliness. So, chemical alteration for first-class citizenship. Beauty products and advertisements offered avenues to what many African Americans ultimately wanted, and that was equality, or what they termed at the time first-class citizenship. Historically, African Americans have faced much racism, inequity, and discrimination in the United States. Because of this, African Americans have always been in a struggle for civil and equal rights. This was reflected as a major theme in the findings. What I kept seeing was this connection between beauty and first-class citizenship. For Black women and Black people, for that matter, appearance was much more than a beauty statement. It was believed that one's appearance could be their liberation from social, political, and economic oppression. Because Black features were often social markers of inferiority in a white-dominated and white supremacist society, it was believed that altering those aesthetics with chemicals could allow one to marginally liberate themselves from some societal oppressions. Changing one's phenotype was believed to allow economic mobility or social advancement. This was particularly the belief of prominent NAACP member Walter White. So Walter White was a self-identifying African-American man who physically encompassed many European traits. Most visible was his blonde hair and his blue eyes, characteristics often equated to those of white ancestry. These physical attributes did not remove him from his Black racial identity, however. He first recognized the social meaning of being Black when he was just a child and under the attack of a white mob. It was as a young boy that Walter White realized that even with his white features, the one-drop rule made him unworthy of human rights. Although he was of some African ancestry, he did find ways to privilege his white features. Often, Walter would pass for white when going undercover for journalistic material on the lynchings of Black Americans by white people. It was through these literary works and his NAACP activism that he was able to dedicate his life to racial progress, uplift, and equality. Even with his commendable accomplishments, his legacy is not removed from critique. There was some controversy surrounding one of his hopeful tactics toward racial equality, or his hopes for the path to first-class citizenship for Black people. So I have this advertisement here because I wanted to illustrate one, who Walter White is. You can see him in the left in this box, in the small box. And this is an article that he wrote for Look magazine. So this actual article was not in the Chicago Defender, but I had to go and find it because the Chicago Defender articles kept referring to this Look magazine article. So in this article, what Walter White does is he is proposing this idea that this new chemical is going to totally change race relations in America. So monobenzyl, I think that's what it was called, was basically what he's saying can be used for the entire Black race, that they can use this and transform their skin to white skin. And therefore, if there are no Black skinned people, there can be no racism. This was his proposal, right? So you can see the images in the middle of the woman on the left where she's pictured with darker skin. And then the assumption is that after, this is what African Americans would look like. And this could somehow end the color line, okay? Now, the reason why so many articles were talking about this one article that Walter White wrote was because Walter White was seen as a leader of the Black community, right? So think of 1990s USA, Al Sharpton. So at the time, Al Sharpton was viewed as a leader of the Black community. So anything that he said would be taken as something that people would consume, whether they agree or not. They would view his perspective as valuable because of who he was and his status within the Black community. So if Al Sharpton suggested something and he said that this will bring equality to Black people, people would take what he says, and whether they agree or not, it's going to be a conversation because of who he was. So that is Walter White. So Walter White is like a prominent figure in the early 1900s. Okay, we'll come back to this article as well. So a 1949 Chicago Defender article explained that Walter White predicted that a chemical, this is a quote, which sometimes turns the skin from Black to white may end the color line. This belief that transforming Black skin to white for the purposes of equality has been disproved multiple times. Even Walter White's own life experiences, him having white skin, but still being limited to the socio-political confines that was allowed to of a Black person. This proposal also assumes that Black people would want to chemically change their skin complexion in the name of first-class citizenship. However, also according to the article, some Black people did not. So this is a quote from the article. Negroes are proud of their heritage and do not want to lose it by merging with the white world. They want first-class citizenship, not second-class as Negroes. According to the article, this is also a quote, race prejudice must be destroyed, and this would not be accomplished through any vaunted power of an ebony changing chemical, rather by relentless struggle until full rights are one for all, regardless of race, creed, or color. So what Black people have wanted is equal rights, and to get it, some were open to explore multiple possibilities. So this as well is an article that challenges Walter White's perspectives of that Look magazine article. And I just want to read a few quotes from it. So what they did is they talked about the way that people were talking about the conversation that Walter White presented, right? So I'm just going to read at the bottom right. It says, Dixie Fortune felt the same way. Pretty coffee colored Dixie murmured with a smile, just let me keep my little race brown. Angie Disraeli, a young Negro of Haitian extraction, said he wouldn't use a bleaching chemical. We found one man who was indecisive on the chemical. He said, I wouldn't use it. But after a moment's thought, he added, unless everyone else did. I wouldn't want to be left alone as the world's only Negro. So he's saying if everyone else did it, he would do it, but he doesn't really want to. But he also doesn't want to be the only Black person left. So Walter White's article, I'm going to highlight a few things here. So the title says, has science conquered the color line? A revolutionary chemical compound has been discovered that turns Black skin white. When it is perfected, Negroes who use it could pass as white. And I'm just going to read a little bit from the beginning of the article, which says, science has discovered a chemical that has changed the color of skin from Black to white. If completely perfected and widely used, this chemical could hit the structure of society with the impact of an atomic bomb. It carries implications of tremendous social changes, especially in the United States. It could, in fact, conquer the color line. And then at the end of the article, it states, whatever the results, it is virtually certain. I think someone forgot to turn their mic off. Whatever the results, it is virtually certain that the discovery will bring a new era. No longer will skin color be a criterion of human ability and acceptance. Monobenzyl may do more for race relations than any other scientific discovery to date. And the color line, the shame of the 20th century in America, may go forever, as slavery did in the 19th century. So he's honestly convinced that this could be the way to first-class citizenship for African Americans. Okay. And actually, so in the chat, if you can respond from a 2022 lens, what do you all think about Walter White's about his suggestions? Has the color line been conquered? Respond in the chat, please. Alrighty, so discussion. Unlike the way that America privileges the natural rights of white Americans, historically Black women have needed to earn their humanity. One way to show that they are worthy, Black women must meet the societal standards of beauty and professionalism. We have seen these themes pop up historically in beauty advertisements and contemporarily in public discussions centering the ways in which Black women present themselves. Because this is a conversation that is still being had about Black women, and because there is still a color line, science has not conquered the color line. This idea that Black women are still expected to earn opportunity and respect by complying to societal standards of beauty and status is what I have termed as a beauty deferred. This term is a play off of Langston Hughes' A Dream Deferred. A Dream Deferred was Hughes' way of communicating a reality of never attaining equality. This dream of equality being just that, a dream to never come true, at least not in the foreseeable future. This was a dream deferred. I use the term beauty deferred because this idea of Black women being able to earn respect, status, or opportunity based on their outer appearance was a dream that has still yet to come into fruition. This dream is even more problematic as rights and opportunity are not guaranteed if or when Black women do meet these standards. In other words, adhering to societal demands only provides an opportunity or a hope to receive equal treatment, but not a promise fulfilled. So the implications of this presentation, I'm going to connect the meaning of this to two tenets of CRT, or critical race theory, which are the social construction of race, as well as racism as ordinary and endemic. So the social construction of race means that race as a biological reality does not exist. This means that race, as we understand it, does not rely on genetic difference. Rather, it was created and is sustained through social means based on power relations. There's more genetic diversity within racial groups than between racial groups. Yet there are still physical traits that people with common origin share, such as skin color and hair, but those characteristics are only an extremely small portion of their genetic makeup and have little or nothing to do with distinctly human high-order traits. Even though race is not a biological reality, socially constructed race has a very real and profound impact on life experiences and opportunities for people of color. The idea that beauty products could provide status or social mobility by altering some identifying racial features could be a possibility for some, but the reality is that because race has been socially constructed in the United States, altering an entire race's skin complexion is unlikely to change the dynamics of race on a large scale within society. So race is not just determined by skin complexion. We identify race as a lot of things. It can be language, it can be where you live, it can be your culture, your religion. So just changing one aspect will not change racial structures, which in this case was the skin complexion, okay? Because of the way society has developed, racism has become an ordinary part of our culture. A leading tenet of CRT is that racism is in fact ordinary. What this means is that racism is often an everyday experience for people of color. It is the usual way society does business. Racism is not an unusual occurrence or rarity in society. It is something that takes place consistently through individual, societal, and institutional levels. Racism is so commonplace that it has even infiltrated the very structures upon which society functions, known as institutional racism. From institutions to cultural practices, racism is a normalcy that is ever present. Even so, in beauty politics and the way that society equates race, beauty, and success. Ultimately, beauty products will not eliminate racism or provide a first-class citizenship to an entire race of people. So conclusion, analyzing and exploring beauty advertisements from the early 1900s in the Chicago Defender, it is clear that a certain ideal of beauty was promoted to Black women. Popular beauty products from the time consisted of an array of bleaching products, including creams and ointments from brands such as Black and White, Spinola, Terra Vitae, and Covera. Additionally, a variety of hair straightening products were notably advertised assuring smooth and luxurious hair. These advertisements indicate that both bleached skin and straight hair were valued and sought after in society. Additionally, these advertisements indicate that by participating in these specified beauty standards, Black women could achieve a pathway to a new ethnic identity, cleanliness, and/or first-class citizenship. This understanding of what beauty was for Black women was heavily influenced by a variety of factors, such as white supremacy, the social construction of race, racism and slavery. Today, conceptions of beauty for Black women are still highly contested and are still being influenced by similar, if not the same, factors. This research is important as I believe that studying the past helps us to better understand the present and prepares us for what to expect in the future. In other words, understanding the way that race, beauty, and opportunity are related in society could help us to understand beauty politics today, as well as how society will likely privilege or marginalize specific beauty in the future. So that concludes my presentation. I believe that Aaron is going to start us off with questions, and he's going to open the floor for questions. And if people are thinking of questions, I would like to offer these two questions and you can respond in the chat as well. So, do you believe that opportunity and respect are linked to beauty today? Any examples as to why or why not? And will there always be a color line in the United States? Why or why not? Or how not? And I will stop here.
Wow. Thank you for this lecture, Dr. Gaines. And while people think of their questions, let's start this discussion off by me asking you, were there any assumptions that you came into this research project with, and how are they challenged over time?
Yeah, so for my master's thesis, I did similar research, but in with the Baltimore Afro, also a historically Black newspaper. So, and I actually focused on a similar time frame, early 1900s, but I believe I did up until 1930. So depending on your location in the United States, you'll have access to specific historically Black newspapers. especially if you're trying to access them through your institution. So because where I was at my last institution, the access that I had to was to the Chicago Defender. And where I was for my master's thesis, I had access to the Baltimore Afro. The Baltimore Afro reflected the same advertisements, right? So this was not a regional experience. This is a pretty standard experience for Black women throughout the United States, right? So I kind of knew what I was going to find already. I knew I was going to see lots of things, Madam C.J. Walker. I knew I was going to see lots of beauty products in terms of skin bleaching and the Baltimore Afro, though, I saw more things about switches, hair switches, which is kind of like weave, what we would consider like weave today. So did that answer your question, Aaron? You said, what did I want to go, what did I go into this thinking?
Yes, what did you go into this thinking? And then what was challenged?
What was challenged? Well, I don't know that I was challenged. I don't know that anything that I thought I wouldn't. Actually, no. Okay. So the advertisement, the discussions about Walter White's suggestions, the newspaper makes it seem like most African Americans would not agree with that. For whatever reason, I went in thinking that it would be a popular belief. I thought that people would be interested in this new idea of turning white to get equality, right? So throughout history, like this long civil rights movement, as people refer to it, there's always different ways that Black people are trying to gain equality, right? So it's just one of the ways that Black people thought this could be a way for freedom or equality. So yeah.
All right, so you have one question in the chat thus far. It starts, I didn't realize skin bleaching was such a commonplace practice. How did that fall out of favor?
So now, okay, here's what we can assume. Because there were so many advertisements that advertised it, we have to assume that there was a consumer base for it, right? Meaning we have to assume that because there were so many advertisements, people were buying the products, right? Now, we also have to think about the way that medicine and technology has changed, right? A few reasons could have happened here, right? The, what's the word I want to use here to say unhealthy? So this type of, using those chemicals cause things like skin cancer, right? Which may or may not have been known in the early 1900s. We know this now. So one, the dangers of it, right? And also, certain things are just more criticized in society, and skin bleaching is one of them. Even when Michael Jackson, people say he bleached his skin, there was a lot of conversation revolving around this, right? And they were saying, well, why would he do this? Or why would he change the way he looks, right? So it's just something that people are very critical of.
Okay. I have another question for you. This one says, what are your thoughts in men who got their hair processed back in the day? Think James Brown, Nat King Cole, among others.
I think people should wear their hair however they want to wear it. And I think, listen, some of my favorite movies are movies like The Temptations, The Five Heartbeats, where all the men wore the permed hair, right? I remember as a kid watching Denzel Washington's Malcolm X movie, Spike Lee's Malcolm X movie, where they permed their hair, right? If that's what they want to do to their hair, and it was cool at the time, it was a fashion statement, I won't criticize them for doing that.
All right, I got another question for you. During your research, did you find other prominent forms of media that reinforce foundations of anti-Blackness through society, and specifically in reference to your frame of beauty and how it's warped through white dominance? That's the first part. Also, clearly media as a form of communication to mass of society has had a huge impact on Blackness. I was wondering about your thoughts on media being used to rewrite those relationships and associations of Blackness and impurity, unclean, and not white.
So my research focused on the early 1900s, right? So a major way of communication was newspapers at the time. So right in 2022, we have multiple forms of media, right? Those same avenues did not exist in 1900 to 1940s, 1950s. So newspaper was that mass media at the time, okay? The second part of the question, can you repeat that, Aaron?
I got you. Where is it? Also, clearly media as a form of communication to a massive society has had a huge impact on Blackness. I was wondering about your thoughts on media being used to rewrite those relationships and association of Blackness and impurities, unclean and not white.
Okay, I think I understood the question. Are they asking how has media rewritten these different types of beauty?
That's my impression as well, but if the person posing the question can provide us more context, we can get you a better answer.
Okay. Well, I'm thinking more of through a contemporary lens here, right? So now our form of media is social media. That is the way we largely get in our society we consume information, right? So I think of things like YouTube. I think there's been research done actually that has talked about this natural hair movement in YouTube, right? Where even I was one of those people who learned about or who learned of this natural community on YouTube, right? Where there's so many YouTubers that do natural hair tutorials, product reviews, all these other things. So there's different ways to see beauty in that light. But then also we have to look at things within a social context. I think someone forgot to mute. So we have to look at things within a larger social context, right? So we do see some forms of beauty that do not reflect this, for Black women, this white standard. And we can see that during like the 1960s. So you have the Black is Beautiful movement, you have Black Panthers and Black Power, where there is a promotion of natural hair. You see the afros being popular in the 60s and 70s, and this total rejection of European beauty standards, right? So I think there's a combination there between the society as well as the media that is available at the time.
All right. If that did not answer your question, please feel free to email and hopefully we can provide you with some clarification. Next question for you. Were you able to explore research outside the US when it came to colorism and skin bleaching? That's the first part. The second part, did other countries hold the same sentiments similar to America?
So when I was working on my master's thesis, I looked up a lot of research written by Yaba Blay, Dr. Yaba Blay. And her research looks at skin bleaching in Ghana specifically, right? So similar here, right? Where some people do it, some people criticize it. I will say though, in other countries, you're more likely to find those types of products still popularly advertised than you will in the United States, right? So in places like when I went to Ghana, you would see them on billboards. When I went to Trinidad and Tobago, they were like, I went to this event. This was actually an Indian event for a celebration of Diwali. And they had different tents with all these different skin bleaching products, right? But we don't necessarily see that in the United States. Like you can still find it, but it's kind of like hidden within, like there's not huge sections of it. There's, like if you go to the store, you can still see it. So if you're looking for research outside of the US, I would suggest to start with Yapa Blay.
All right, next question for you. I got to the question. I had to read through half of this to get to the actual question. Do you believe that Black people should bleach their skin for societal acceptance?
I think I would. I don't have children, but if I had a child, I wouldn't encourage them to do that. But at the same time, I don't. If people do it, I don't think that we should be there to criticize them. I think we should be there to criticize society, meaning why are they choosing to do this? Why do they feel like they need to do this in order to gain acceptance? Or why do they feel like they need to do this to be successful in society, right? The root of the problem is actually racism, right? The ways that people think that they can gain equality or that they can gain acceptance or that they can reach some type of standard is just their way of trying to beat the system or some way to fit in within the system. So I wouldn't criticize that person, or I also would not suggest or anything in that manner, but I would more so criticize structures.
Next question. Do you think hair straightening can be removed from an idealization of Eurocentric features and performed solely as an expression of individuality/style?
Say that question one more time.
Do you think hair straightening can be removed from an idealization of Eurocentric features and performed solely as the expression of individuality and style/style?
Yeah, that's tough, right? So even historically, some people say that they straighten their hair because it's easier to manage, or not because it is to reflect a white beauty standard, but because that's just the way they want to wear their hair, right? I think that's okay. I think people should wear their hair however they want to wear their hair. But I think also we should look at larger contextual lens, right? And again, this goes back to advertising, right? So like when I was a kid, those "just for me, JUSTFORME," right, where they're like selling perms and straighteners to little kids. I think we should question those things, if that makes sense.
I remember that commercial and the "It's my money and I want it now." That's really. All right, next question. Where do biracial people fit into this narrative? Are their features less worthy of research?
No, I don't think their features are less worthy of research. And there's lots of people who do research on biracial identities and things like that. I haven't, but some feminist scholars say the personal is political. Biracial identity is not a reality for me. So it was this research was something that I was very passionate in understanding, right? Not to say that biracial identities I have not been passionate about, but because it has not been a lived reality for me, it was not something that I went to seek out for this research, if that makes sense. But I think it's very important to understand it. And I'm trying to think, there's a book called, I know the woman's, her name is Sika Dagbovi, and she does a lot of research on mixed race identities. I would start there if someone is interested in learning more there.
Next question for you. Do you feel like it is still a beauty standard for Black women to bleach their skin and straighten their hair?
Okay, so when I was in my doctoral program at Michigan State University, at the time, this was very popular on social media. So this is not too long ago, right? This was just a few years ago. I can't remember her. I think her name was Densia, right? And I don't remember if she was Nigerian, but I know for sure she was African, right? And she promoted this product called White Niches. And she recruited people like Black China to promote her products, right? So it is something that Black China is American, a Black American woman. So people still use the products. Again, it's just not as widely as accepted. It's more so criticized a lot. So yes, I hope that answers the question.
Next question. How do you think that white people felt about Black individuals using those products back then? Do you think they supported it or they were against it?
Okay. So I used to teach from a textbook, and they talked about this idea of a white Negro, right? So there was always this discussion about that revolved around, could skin complexion change the way that we viewed race, right? And so when they talked about white Negroes, they talked about, they were referring to people with albinism, right? And they were referring to people with vitiligo, right? So this idea that Black people could be white and it could change the way that we view color in the United States. It didn't, right? But some people did think that way. I also don't, when we say, what do white people, I don't know necessarily what white people thought, right? But I know that as an entire race, Black people have not been able to pass some individuals, and white people didn't notice, right? But those people wouldn't have necessarily gotten the opinions of white people unless they were, like, typically people who passed didn't say they were passing to white people. I don't know what white people would think about that.
I think we're at a lull. We're waiting for, as we're waiting for more questions. So I'll go ahead and toss you another one. Oh, wait, we got one. Do you think the problem with lightening the skin is a lack of self-worthiness in the Black community?
I wouldn't say that, right? Because again, we have to criticize structures and systems rather than individual people. So if a person is doing it, we have to ask why they're doing it, right? Are they doing it so that they can fit in with society? Are they doing it because they feel like they can only be successful by doing this? I would not want to say that it is a lack of self-worth.
All right. So while we wait for another question, I have a question. Oh, y'all keep getting me. Do you have any opinions on the contradicting messages of American popular culture, with its need to borrow / steal aspects of Black culture and Black features, while also utilizing racism to devalue and diminish it?
Do I have any opinions on, say that one more time?
I got you. I'll run it back. I got you. Do you have any opinions on the contradicting messages of American pop culture, with its need to borrow / steal aspects of Black culture and Black features, while also utilizing racism to devalue and diminish it?
I mean, that's a common historical pattern, right? We have seen it historically and we continue to see it today. I don't have an opinion. I think it's American culture. That's just what it is. Like, historically, we can see it in every aspect, is what I'm trying to say, meaning music, hair, facial features. We see it often. It's just a part. I don't want to say it's okay, because I'm not saying that. I'm just saying, being a person who studies race, I don't have lots of feelings related to it, because then I'll just be angry all the time. I don't want to be angry all the time.
Try to get there. I'm angry all the time. Beyond the use of products, how do you see the motivations fueling the interpersonal interactions of Black women amongst themselves back then and now? The second part, how has this been internalized over time in other ways?
Okay, I can see this person's question. Beyond the use of products, how do you see the motivations fueling the interpersonal interactions of Black women amongst themselves back then and now? How has this been internalized over time in other ways? So, like we saw with the first example I gave was an example of Monique, right? Who's a Black woman, but was criticizing publicly these Black women who were in the airport, right? So again, when I said we have to look at structures and systems, this way that we criticize Black women do it too, right? And as you said, it's in some ways we've internalized racism and we've internalized these different things, and then we project that on other people, right? That is an unfortunate reality, being as though we live in a society that kind of encourages that, and people knowingly or unknowingly do it, okay?
Okay, so someone asked, is there room for discussion on the idea of Black self-hatred? If not, then can we talk about Black lack of self-worth within the community?
I think that's somebody else to talk about. Meaning I would not say, again, I don't know if this is connecting to beauty and things like that. I would not say lack of self-worth. I would be, when you're dealing with populations that have sensitive histories and that have been marginalized in society, we want to be very careful with language that we use, right? So that would not be my take. I wouldn't frame it that way. So I don't really know how to go about responding to that.
All right, so I have a question pertaining to the title of your presentation. You entitled this, it could in fact conquer the color line. What is the it?
Yeah, so the it is, so I took that quote straight from this article, right? It could in fact conquer the color line. When he says it, he's talking about monobenzyl, right? When I'm saying it, I'm speaking generally to the different beauty products. So these different beauty products could in fact conquer the color line, or these beauty products could gain Black people equality. These beauty products could create a just society, is what it means.
Okay. Well, if there are no I noticed that you don't blame Black people for their acts, but society for encouraging Blacks to act. Do you think that parents have a responsibility to instill self-pride?
So so first, let me start off by saying I'm not a parent, right? But I will say that who you are as a person sometimes can come from your childhood and your upbringings, and parents can have a responsibility to instill self-pride, right? But the parent is also born and raised in the same society that the child is born into, right? So does the parent understand the way race and racism works in society? And are they able to teach that to their child, right? So this is assuming, regardless of race, this is assuming that the parent understands self-pride and self-worth, right? And then they can then teach it to their child. If they see it as a responsibility, then sure. But again, I don't want to blame parents either. Okay.
All right. So again, I would like to thank you all for joining us this evening for our annual John T. Lecture Series and for participating. We want to thank UCF Alumni for partnering for hosting tonight's lecture. Appreciation is also extended to the UCF Foundation, which provides support and the continuation of scholarship awards to Africana Studies Minors. To support these scholarships and honor the work and life of John T. Washington, we encourage you to help continue his legacy by giving back to Africana Studies scholarships. To make a gift, no matter how big or how small, you can go to ucffoundations.org/give now. We will include the link in the chat with detailed instructions on how to give to this fund. A recording of this event's lecture will be available at UCF Alumni Virtual Hub and on the UCF History Department's YouTube channel. Thank you all, and have a great evening.